Unsurprisingly, I think to many of you, I used to, in a previous life, be a Jewish youth group advisor. What? Sarah working with teenagers and kids? Crazy. And a lot of the times I would talk to my kids. They were preteens, a lot of them middle schoolers, and we'd have a lot of discussions. One that often came up was becoming a grown-up, because they were the age where they were transitioning into becoming adults, and that's tough, if you remember. We talked about what it meant to be a grown-up and the difference between being a kid and being an adult. And one of the ways I would explain it to them, I would say that being an adult means doing things that you do not want to do, or not doing things that you really want to do. I would use the chocolate cake example, that as an adult, I can eat chocolate cake for breakfast. I have that ability. But I know that that is not a good choice, so I usually do not eat chocolate cake for breakfast, even though I really want to. And you have to remember, if it's been a little while, you might not, but when you're a kid, you think, oh, when I'm a grown-up, when I'm an adult, I can do whatever I want, whenever I want, and no one can tell me otherwise. I can eat candy for dinner and stay up all night playing video games. So, my kids were really disappointed when I told them that when you actually are an adult, you can eat candy for breakfast, and you can eat cake for lunch, and you can stay up all night. Yes, you could. But generally, you choose not to, because it's not a good choice. And I remember one of my kids, a boy, who ironically for what we're reading in the Torah this week, his name was Noah, and he said, "Sarah, it doesn't sound like being an adult is very much fun." And I was like, well, yeah, Noah, it's not as much fun as you think it's gonna be, probably, but being an adult means making choices that don't always make you happy. But you make those choices because they're the right ones. The story of Noah, not my youth group kid Noah, but Noah from the Torah, that we're reading this week is familiar to, I would say, almost all of us. 99% of us have some familiarity with the story of Noah, God, the world's terrible, and build a boat, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not going to go into the details of it, you know it, and it's frankly not what I really want to talk about, actually, right now. Because there's this part leading up to the whole saga, where God is looking down, I imagine, metaphorically, at the world and sees that people are just awful. People are evil. And they're not just run-of-the-mill evil. People are purposefully evil. They want to do and be evil all the time. The Torah literally goes out of its way to say all the time. And there's this one line during that lead up that always strikes me every time I read it. God's looking at the world and seeing people, and God's looking, by the way, at these people that God made to be in the divine image. And they're being evil all the time. And the Torah gives us this line which gives us insight into God's psyche, what God is thinking in that moment, what God feels in that moment. And that's fascinating because it happens so rarely in the Torah. The Torah says, "V'inechem Adonai kol asa et ha'adam." God regretted that they had made human beings. God regretted something? It's just such an odd way to think about God. But it doesn't stop there, because the line continues. V'yatsev el libo, God's heart was saddened, was grieved. God was sad, which is not a quality we generally attribute to, the divine, sadness. But God is sad and regrets making people. Now, I'll be very honest. I am very familiar with this line. It always gives me pause every year when I read the story in Parshat Noach. I always stop and I look at that line. But for some reason, this year, I looked up to see what did other much, much, much older rabbis than myself, what did they say about this line? I don't know what possessed me to look this year, but I did. Rashi, a medieval French-German fellow, brilliant fellow, rabbi, of course. He says that God's heart is saddened because God knows, when seeing just how bad people are, that there will have to be a flood and will have to save Noah and his family. And for the first time in my many, many, many years of reading this Noah story, I thought to myself, that whole flood everything solution doesn't really make any sense. I don't get it, because if everyone on earth was so terrible and truly people were evil all the time, God should have just wiped everybody out. I don't mean to sound heartless, but, saving some people doesn't seem like the logical solution. If the problem of people being awful, if the problem of humanity's experiment is that it's failed, why not wipe the earth clean? No more people. And there are stories, there are midrash that are told that's exactly what God did in previous worlds that God created. Just got rid of them. So why not do that again? God knows. That what has to be done is to continue with human life, with people, with all of our flaws and our foibles. That human life was worth continuing, but still God was sad. That choice to keep people going clearly did not make God happy. Torah would have told us. Wiping the slate clean would mean there would be no more people to disappoint God. God wouldn't have to feel regret and watch human beings choose to be evil. God didn't want to choose to bring more heartache, more sadness to God's self. But the painless route wasn't what the divine chose to do. Which brings me back to Noah, not Torah Noah, kid in my youth group Noah. When I explained to him that, like God, when you're an adult, we know, sometimes you have to make decisions. And those decisions don't bring you happiness, and they don't bring you joy. And sometimes you have to make decisions that make you sad. But you do those things, you make those decisions, you make those choices because it's worth it. Now, we are currently in an in-between period. Right now. Thank God, positive test rates and hospitalization rates are not as high as they were in the summer for COVID. And with the end of those 100+ degree days, we can finally enjoy being outside, eating outside, going to events outside. We have so many really great events planned for outside here at Beth Yeshurun. I'm so excited as they kind of roll out the pipeline. And that's great because we know that that's safer too. And this lull is great also, and I speak for myself. I can only really speak for myself, but I think I'm speaking for plenty of you too because I've heard this from many people. This lull is great because we're tired. I'm tired. I'm tired of the upending of my life. No hugs and no handshakes and no holidays with grandma and grandpa, and you have to wear a mask to school, and you have to wear a mask to the office, and you have to wear a mask to the store. I'm tired, we're all tired of worrying, of being scared, of getting sick, of getting someone else sick, or worse. And being scared and worried and anxious for so long, it takes a toll. It wears you down. And how could it not? So we're tired. We feel done with the whole thing. But we are in a valley, which means everything points to it. Numbers they're not exploding. Houston, we are really good here. We're good people here. We know what we're doing, and we're doing really well. And our numbers are not exploding the way they are in other places, which is great. but they are inching up. And our medical professionals are warning that it could be very bad again. And even just saying that feels terrible. It does not bring me joy to tell you that, to say that, the reality. I don't want to have to say that. It feels awful to just say that. Because we're tired. And feeling tired and fed up and done is totally appropriate. I'd be shocked if you didn't feel tired of all of this by this point. But like God, we have to keep making the unpleasant choices that we've been making. Not to stop living our lives. We're not going to stop living our lives. We're not going to stop being ourselves. No, that's not who we are. We just have to keep up all those unpleasant adjustments that we've had to make to our lives in order to help them run. And those things don't make us happy, but we've gotten very skilled at them. Wearing the mask and keeping the distance and adjustments to events that are outdoors or limited numbers, all those things. These are the choices that we make, and we do them well. And we don't have to feel good about making these choices, but if we do them, if we do the hard thing, if we make the unpleasant choice in order to be able to keep doing the things that we can do right now, that we love to be able to do right now, then we can hold this thing at bay. If we all pitch in the way we know we can, because we've done it, we've been doing it, and we're good at doing it. And because we are strong, we are stronger than this thing, we are stronger together, and because we care for each other here. And that makes all the difference. When God flooded the world, God was not happy about it. A world with no people? That wouldn't break God's heart. Sounds great, right? Who wants to have their heart broken? But God chose to keep going with the experiment that was humanity, as painful as that decision was to make. We too have to keep making those tough choices that we have been making, the masks and the distance and the limited numbers and the adjustments to events and doing things outside, and not because those choices bring us joy. Do you think I enjoy sitting up here for hours with a mask on? That it's fun? Come on. We don't do these unpleasant things because they feel good, but we do them because we know they're the right choice. Because they're the choices that keep us all safe, and because we are strong enough to do them. Like God, we are making the tough choice to preserve humanity. And I know you're tired of having to do it over and over and over. I'm tired too. But I also know that we can do it. We can do it well. And we can do it for as long as we need to. Because we're strong like that. Shabbat Shalom.